Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. Sorry for the small delay. We were loading up some content for you guys, and there's lots of it today. I am lucky to have Paul Rossi with me. Welcome, Paul. Welcome back, I should
Hi,
say.
Deb. Glad to
Hi.
be here again.
So, wow. For those of you just joining us, please like, share, and consider subscribing to the channel, but like and share this video out. Paul's about to tell us what we're going to see today, and most of this show is going to be him showing us things that he saw through trainings and me asking questions and talking back and forth. But I just wanted you guys to see this. So, Paul, explain what we're about to see.
Yeah. I've obtained footage from the National Association of Independent Schools 2021 People of Color Conference, which occurred. It was a virtual conference from November 29th to December 3rd last year, so about a month and a half ago. And the interesting thing about this conference it has a student component as well, called the Student Diversity Leadership Conference, but it's essentially a kind of combination festival of belonging, I would say. But really, what's underneath the hood is that it's a teacher training, so it's professional development, which is billed as the flagship diversity conference for this association. And in this association, the National Association of Independent Schools is the governing association for 1,600 of the most prestigious private schools in the country. These are the people that feed the Ivies and the secondary Ivies, however you want to refer to them.
Right.
And so these are the schools that really, these are where the elites are going to pull from. Elite,
I mean, spend a lot
societies
of money to go there.
spend a lot of money. So 50,000, 60,000 if you pay the full tuition. There's also financial aid and so on, and giant alumni donations. And so most of them don't take state money, but I think this conference is influential beyond its borders because it's a chance for a lot of these diversity practitioners to really test out their ideas, and a lot of them are speaking. One of these clips we're going to see are them describing their work in the classroom with students, and it gives us a chance, I think, to see how the kind of intellectual mountaintop ideas filter down into the classroom, and what exactly is taking place as far as the pedagogical manipulations that you may be seeing. If you're parents, you may be seeing this in your children's assignments. You may be seeing this in their obsession with identity and so on. And so we're going to look at um, the big picture in some of these clips and the micro picture. So we're gonna be bouncing around a little bit, but
Okay.
mhm.
So, what I want to ask the audience before we get started playing clips is I have set up a looper thing for the sound. Fingers crossed. I think it works, but you please immediately, if you do not hear sound when I'm playing one of these, let me know so I can go address that as soon as possible. Okay. Just like go into the comments and be like, no sound. Okay. All right. So, where do you want me to go first?
Let's start with 01, the first clip that,
Okay.
and we'll give that a try.
01. Okay. Is that the one that's traversing the one that has burn in it?
No, this should be the one that says it's about from small activists, big impact.
Okay, must be hidden. Hang on one second. I'm gonna go find it. Small activist, big impact. Let me go in here and find it. Hold on a second, because we downloaded most of these beforehand, but there we go. Okay,
Should be 01,
and
small
yep,
activists, big impact.
Kindergartners, I want to say.
okay. There we go. Let's get this. Okay, this is the one, right?
That's it.
Okay, here goes nothing. Let me know if you hear it.
I can't hear it.
You can't hear it?
I can't hear it, no, but maybe it's just me. I'm not sure.
Hold on a second. No sound. Okay, hang on a second.
Still not hearing anything.
Virtual. I wonder if there's like a delay because it has worked before. Now you can't hear me. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You have to pick share sound. All right. Where's the share sound though? You can hear me now. That's great. But we need to get the audio. And okay, you guys can hear me, but can you guys can't hear the sound, and there's supposed to be some way I can do share sound. And I've done this before, so that's what I'm kind of confused about, is why it's not working. Wait a minute. This might work. This might work. Let's see if this works, you guys.
Kindergartners, I want to say too that kindergartners are natural social justice warriors. Like I mentioned before, I see this all the time on the playground. That's unfair. And this is why it's unfair. This is the reasons that it's unfair. And I think if we just build upon the mindset of a kindergartner, that it's fantastic. You can get them to do fabulous things in the social justice realm. Okay. So years ago, when I started the work, I thought about how could I frame the work where I'm hitting all the core topics and domains. Like how I can't just jump in and say, okay, we're gonna do this, and they have to have a foundation in which the work is built upon, so you can see also as an educator how really there's this transformation period that happens, kindergartners, and, a lot of kids are, in the beginning, being 5 and 6, the mindset is a very self-centered mindset, right? Me, just me thinking, right? So we have to think about how can we start with, think about yourself, think about your identity, think about who you are, and then we're going to slowly move. So, I read this article by Professor Bree Picower called Using Their Words, 6 Elements of Social Justice, Curriculum Design for the Elementary Classroom. And it just was absolutely fascinating. And I thought that would be really helpful with me framing my year about what I hope to accomplish in a year with kindergarten students. So the first domain of Bree Picower's 6 Elements of Social Justice is self-love and knowledge. The second is respect for others. The third is issues of social justice. The fourth is social movements and change. The fifth is awareness rising. And the sixth is social action. And I'll show you how throughout this presentation, I'm going to show you how I kind of hit on those certain domains to get
so
the
I think that's the
results
basic
that we want
idea.
for them.
We can stop there.
Okay.
So what's going on here? How is this? Well, one thing, that I watch her is that I think she's a very talented teacher. And throughout the presentation, if you watch, the way that she clearly has a connection with the kids, and she has a very, lively face, very good facial expressions, very engaging. And, that makes it somewhat even more scary, because what's happening here is that there's something actually good about this in a way. Like the first step is develop a healthy self-concept in the child, get them to express themselves, get them to talk about their preferences and what they like, what kind of ice cream do they like. And she goes on in the presentation to talk about this, and then it moves to, well, what are things that people might see and think about you if they didn't know you? And then they talk about, how you're perceived by other kids. And, building on that, there's a sense of, okay, this is, who I am, and then how you're seen, and you develop empathy, right? And then empathy leads to a kind of awareness of other people's problems and situations, but that becomes the platform for a social justice ideology.
And then from
Right. What I noticed is though that she said the work
Right.
like a lot, and it's something that I hear these trainers say as if it's almost like the catechism.
It
It's
is.
kind of
It is. And you're going to
yeah.
hear that phrase throughout all of these clips. It is remarkable how it's like a kind of a worry bead, like certain cultures in the Mediterranean, they have these beads and I mean, that's what it is for them. It really is the go-to phrase, that really encapsulates everything they're up to. This work, you hear this work or the work. So yeah, that's a big one.
Wow. Okay, so what do you want me to share next?
Let's take a look at, we could stick with her. Did you download 16? Did we get to that one?
I can. I
Okay,
can
let's
do
do
that.
16 because that'll stick with this trainer who I think is a really interesting teacher.
Okay.
And it touches on something that is a very subtle
Okay.
problem, I think, with some of these.
Okay. So let me get that opened. Now that I've figured out how to do this, it's much easier. All right, here we go.
Okay, so I use this ad. This is a Gap ad where they compare, well, a little boy and a little girl presenting a boy and girl, presenting boy and girl. And they say that the presenting girl is a social butterfly, right? She's a social butterfly. She has her cat ears on. And then for the boy, he has an Albert Einstein shirt on. And then he has his title is the little scholar. And I show this to the kids and I say, in the beginning, they don't get it. They're like, well, that she, like, she likes pink and I was like, yes. I was like, actually, yes. What do you think about the colors? Like, she's wearing pink. Is pink just a color for girls? No. What about for the little boy? What colors is he wearing? Oh, he's wearing blue and green. Is blue and green just a color for boys? No. Right. So this is a stereotype that, that girls like pink and boys like blue and green. And also the deeper than that, it's just like the fact that I explain to them, I say that, social butterfly, like, boys can be social as well, right? Yeah, girls can be scholars as well. Girls are smart, can be scholars as well. So we just analyze the ad in that way and we have discussions. Okay, and then I show them ads that have the right idea. So I show them this Lego ad on the left here that shows a little girl playing with Legos. I think Lego has done a tremendous job of changing that narrative. This is all about narrative shifting, right? We want to show them things that narrative shift. This is what the work is all about also. So then this other ad on here, I think this is from Parent Magazine, and it says it's okay to cry, and it's a little boy holding the sign and just changing those narratives around that. I say, is it okay if you're a boy and you cry? Yeah. And then you have someone say, I cry all the time. And then I say, oh, are there girls that are presenting girls that like, that like Legos? Yeah, I love Legos. I have a set of Legos at home.
There's so many things I noticed there. I mean, for starters, there's the dated ad. I don't believe that's a recent Gap ad. That looks like 30 years old. Secondly, she doesn't realize the children don't need the work. They're already saying, yeah, I like Legos and I know how to cry and boys can wear pink. In other words, what baffles me about all these trainings is they seem to be a solution in search of a problem. I don't actually believe that most kindergartners are walking around, like eagerly grabbing onto the old, really old stereotypes. And yet, what is ironic to me is that gender ideology, as an example, will take the boy and intentionally put him in pink and then say, see, now he's a girl. And it's like, I thought pink didn't have to be worn by girls. Like, I thought the whole point was anyone can wear pink. You don't have to call yourself a girl if you like to wear pink. So that it just feels like I don't understand who they're talking to or why they're talking about these things. What is the necessity of this? Are there a bunch of kindergartners running around oppressing each other when they cry or wear pink or play with Legos? And changing up a narrative, it's not so binary. I mean, First of all, I played with Legos as a kid, and I don't recall ever feeling like I couldn't, and that was in the 70s. So I'm just trying to understand, where's the problem living?
Yeah, so the assumption baked in is that these kids are already programmed by society to value one thing over another. So,
Right.
that's the essential assumption going on here, and that her job as an educator, a social justice educator, is to undo the harm of these stereotypes. If it's tricky because there's a naive way to look at this, which is I think okay, but what's actually going on, I think, is something a lot worse. The naive way is to say, listen, there is a let's grant her the fact that there is some systemic preferences which are inculcated in boys, that they're thought to be more smart and that they wear blue, and then let's just say that's the truth. If you wanted to sort of say, well, listen, it's okay that anyone could like anything, right?
Right.
Girls can like blue and boys can like pink, and it doesn't, you should be comfortable whatever preferences you want. That's fine.
Exactly.
What's
Exactly.
happening here though is that it's more than that. It's putting the finger on the scale and saying this is a stereotype, which is bad. And so a child sees things in moral primary colors, right? So what's happening here is turning the value system upside down and validating and saying it's good. It's better if boys like pink. If boys don't like blue, that's actually good, because if
Yep.
they do like blue, it's a stereotype. If
Well, it's
girls
what
like pink, that's bad because it's a stereotype.
It's what feminism did, in my opinion, or at least, I don't know which stage or phase of feminism, but the phase that made it did such that when I was a college kid in the 80s and I confided in one of my friends that I wanted to be a wife and mother, that was really my highest aspiration. Honestly, I didn't have big career goals, that I was just mocked and derided. And you're like, what kind of a throwback crazy person are you? And you felt like you're a traitor. It would be like the people today who say to a black conservative, you're a race traitor. It was like, you're a gender traitor. You're a traitor to Betty Friedan or whatever. I'm sorry, I didn't ask Betty Friedan to do what she did. And I'm kind of glad for some things that she did, but I kind of wish we didn't have to denigrate the housewife or denigrate domestic life and the domestic engineering, if you will, to the degree that we have, because that's not freeing women up to make all the choices, or men for that matter, because feminism really ought to have also permitted men to stay home with the kids if that's what they wanted to do. Instead, it was more like, I'm going to be a better man than men. I'm going to compete with men on the men's playing field and poo feminism. And I feel like that, or not feminism, a femininity. And so when they do that and say pink is a stereotype, it's saying that if you are a girly girl, like if you're like my daughter was when she was little, like pink everything, that's bad. So
Right.
the little kid who's sitting there thinking, but I like pink and I don't like Legos and I want to play with dolls.
Right. I'm a stereotype. You say
That's a bad
stereotypes are bad.
thing,
Right. So some
right?
preferences are good. The implicit message here, and it's even a little bit explicit, is some preferences are good. Some preferences are stereotypes, which are bad.
Right.
So,
Right.
and that is a great connection you drew with, feminism. What I've heard from other women, that there is an implicit value system here. There's an implicit moral hierarchy going on here, where it's more than just, allowing people to do what they like to do, right? Certainly there were stereotypes, and there were systemic barriers to women entering the workforce, but now it's subsumed by the next level, which and in the absence of a moral system, it becomes a moral system. So this
Very cool.
becomes the moral system where it's actually much higher valued, and you should be ashamed if you choose to be a homemaker, wife and mother, whatever it is, raise children. That is an inferior aspiration, because
Right.
you are not advancing the politics of the political necessities of whatever. And
Right.
you raise another great question about gender identity and gender expression. So what they'll do is they'll say those are separate things. If you look at the gender-bred person, right, they're supposed to be
Genderbread
independent.
person.
The
Right.
independent orthogonal things, like you could have a gender identity and you could express it in whatever way you choose. But what in actual practice, with the transmania that's going on, your gender expression becomes something that you use to determine your gender, and others will tell you, and you'll use
Correct.
that yourself to introject a gender identity from that.
It's like
So
a backwards conversion therapy.
Right. Like,
oh, you're a
and
tomboy. You're really meant to be a boy. You're
right.
not.
And
You're born in the wrong body. It's like
the way I put it is, we've gone from stereotyping genders to genderizing stereotypes.
yes.
So,
Exactly.
there was this moment of sanity, like in the 90s, somewhere around there, where like people, you could be anything, you could express yourself in any way, and you could still be a woman or a man or whatever you actually were. And then we kind of fell over and turned inside out. And now it's,
Exactly.
if you are expressing those things, then that must be
Yeah.
some essential thing that you have.
And things like men wearing makeup and men, wearing high heels, or that's actually not new. It goes all the
Right.
way
Yeah.
back to 15th century France.
Right.
To-
Right. And,
People have been doing that, off and on for hundreds of years. It's not this new, oh my gosh, I've discovered this new thing. It's like, no, it's just popularized. It comes around in circles. But even at that time, nobody said, oh, I must really be a woman. It's like,
right. Right. And
no.
all of that history that you're talking about gets revised in the historical lens of, transmania, where these people were really women, or these people were really men, and they couldn't express it because of the oppression of their times. And so
They may
they
have been
actually had
gay.
these
That's
identities.
possible.
Sure.
That's possible. But I mean, that's the other thing is the kids are getting subtle messages. I think this one is subtle that if you are more feminine and you're male, or you're more masculine and you're female, and then possibly, but you might be gay, no, that your gender and your sexual orientation are even conflated. So like I said at the outset, whenever I see these things, and I know it's geared towards 6-year-olds, my first question is, why are we doing this at all? Like, where was the data that said this was necessary at all? Like, what's the problem we're trying to solve here for the kids? See, that's the other thing is whenever they talk about the social justice, whatever, it's like, did you forget they don't serve you? You are work to help them grow and become who they're going to become. They are not in service to anyone or anything, period. And that seems to be turned around. And I don't hear enough people asking, why are we enlisting the services of small children towards any goal, even if it's worthy, even if it's like the best goal in the world? They're 6.
The goal is to create the kingdom of heaven on earth. So, and that is the God of social justice. So the future is, I mean, it's so much more than the humble goal that a teacher should have, that any sane teacher should have, which is exactly what you're saying, to raise, to give the students the confidence and skills necessary to thrive in the world, to remake it. And if it's something they want to engage in, great, you want to empower them, but it's so much more than that. It is social justice. There is God in schools, and that God is social justice. It's called social justice, but it's really just equity across all domains, in all categories, and so on.
What's next for us, Paul?
You know what? Maybe we could get to number 9. These are not the ones I told you to download, but maybe if you have time to, now that you're really fast.
Now that I'm practiced at it, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. We got number 9. Okay, got it.
Let's do number. I'm sorry, I told you the wrong one. Before we do that, let's do number 8. I think you already got number 8.
Okay, so let's do number 8.
I want to stress this is a 2nd grade teacher.
Okay.
Before we watch this.
And so it was really exciting to get out in the streets. And these are photos the first one wasn't a photo I took, but the rest are photos I took. Seeing people out on the streets, really embracing this concept of systemic change was exciting. Things got really intense in Portland with the federal intervention in downtown. And I never would have imagined that I would be out with a friend gave me a bulletproof vest. Another friend gave me the respirator. I did get better goggles than my kids' swim goggles, but it was a really intense experience. And it also helped me think about my area of influence in terms of being a teacher and how to really push these concepts forward in a developmentally appropriate way in the classroom. The picture on the right is my littlest kiddo. So we did take our kids to some marches. I also...
Developmentally appropriate? I'm sorry, I had to pause that. It was like
yeah,
hanging
that's
in the
a
air.
good catch. Yeah.
I was like, what in the world is developmentally appropriate about any of this? And
Well,
this is my littlest kiddo. Is it actually her child, or is this like a nursery school?
I don't know. I think it is actually her child. She did involve her child in this.
So
'Cause
she's
I
got a
know
bulletproof
later in the
vest and a respirator, but let's take our baby.
Yeah. Now, I mean, it's hard to say whether this is the same event. It could have been a different, the second was in the daytime. You know how with these protests, the nighttime is not the daytime, but it seems bizarre to me as well.
And I noticed somebody in the comments caught the uptalk. That was the other reason I had to pause. I needed to give my ears a break from that speech pattern, but we can continue.
Was involved with supporting and organizing kid marches in my neighborhood. And just empowering youth and empowering Black leadership and voices. It was incredibly inspiring, and we continue to organize some now, but it definitely doesn't have the same energy push as it did during the Summer of George. So today,
the Summer of George,
moving into how it shows up in my classroom, this idea of settler colonialism was something that I started to really understand as a root of a lot of the systemic racism in this country. So I want to give you definition of that. It's an ongoing system of power that perpetuates the genocide and repression of indigenous peoples and cultures. And so we are settler colonialists, right? We perpetuate that unless we are indigenous to the land that we are on.
Holy Jesus.
Yeah. So, that's the most disturbing thing for me. This, how does it show up in my classroom? Well, it's informed by settler colonialism. And she goes on to talk about it. What would it be like for a second grader to feel like they were involved in genocide if they weren't born in the place that they lived? What kind of tremendous weight would that impart?
We already know what the masks are doing to older teenagers, where they're terrified to take it off. I read an article today, a 17-year-old afraid to take off her mask because she doesn't want to be responsible for killing someone. So if that's how, I mean, I'm not saying that's the average, but if that's even possible, that the message of like, protect other people, and you take a little 7-year-old or 8-year-old, like they're about 7-ish in second grade, and you tell them they don't have a right to be where they are. They took it from someone else. That's
yeah.
It's
okay. And it's a tremendous lever. It's an existential guilt, right? So it's a tremendous. I mean, it puts you in a position of what could you possibly do to redeem yourself? Well, anything that the teacher tells you, anything that the teacher gives you as a handout, a way out of this.
Or you could make
thing.
yourself a victim class.
Right. If you're in that class, you can find a way to say, well, I didn't come here by choice, and my ancestors didn't come here by choice, and therefore, I need to attack the people whose culpability it is. So it's frightening. And of course it's, this is Portland, right? So this is some of the most extreme, not surprisingly, sessions. This is a thread that ran through all of them, but some of the most extreme were in the Pacific Northwest. Big surprise. But many, like, these are the people that go on to become, fairly prominent in the movement.
Yeah.
And keep an eye out, like somebody like in the previous clip, the Bree Picowers, the Bettina Loves. These are people who are not the intellectual luminaries like Freire and Foucault and all the people James Lindsay talks about. These are second tier philosophers, I guess, that, maybe that's even too dignified a term, but they are translating this into education. These are the people that they read in the ed schools who actually translate the abstruse theory into pragmatic. That they don't give you lesson plans, but they give you the frameworks around which to build the lesson plans. So this is something I think have been kind of not identified as a kind of intellectual glue that connects the applied praxis to the theory.
Yeah. Well, and then they tell you they want to use a term like Latinx, but we're the colonizers.
Right, right. Lexical imperialism. Angel Eduardo calls it.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
like we can make up words and stuff. Then he likes to
Right.
invade women's spaces too, because that's fine too.
One of
All
the
right.
yeah. Next one we can do is I would go to number 8. Same. We'll do the stay with the same presenters.
Okay. So this is 8.
And so it was really exciting to
wait,
get
this is
out
what
in
we
the
saw.
streets.
We just
And
did
these are
8.
photos
We need
all.
number
The
9.
first one wasn't a
Sorry.
photo I took, but the rest are photos I took.
Might be.
Get rid of it.
Seeing
Hold on,
people
hold on,
out
hold
on the
on.
streets,
More up talk. Can't you get
really
enough?
embracing. And so it was really
No, it was not really anything.
The
It was bad.
Summer of
Okay.
George.
Next. Not 8.
Number 9. Number 9.
often in education, we talk about learning goals or learning targets. And a part of indigenizing the classroom is also breaking down how we.
Indigenizing the
Yes.
classroom.
That was the name of the session. I believe it was decolonizing our minds and indigenizing the classroom.
Okay. Indigenizing.
Right. To render indigenous, or to, I guess, create indigenousness within the classroom.
Well, that would presume she knows exactly who is indigenous to the classroom.
Right. So
I mean, it's utterly ridiculous. The whole thing is so freaking ridiculous.
I know it is, but it's sort of like, imagine like the local foods movement, like taken to your cognitive ability, like taken way into your everything, like, and
so y'all gonna eat sweet potatoes, corn, and hogs for the rest of your lives, right?
I guess. Now there's it's interesting because the other presenter here, I think her background is from Hawaii. And so they do a reading of a book from Hawaii, but it's not clear whether that would actually translate in whatever school you find yourself in or whatever place you find yourself in.
Exactly.
Or the relevance of that to a modern existence and the challenges that kids are actually going to face in a post-information age universe. But they nonetheless they persist. So
nonetheless they persist. So
right. We could get to that. Yeah, but this is, I think, interesting in terms of like capitalism.
How we view our classroom culture. And so that word goal to me feels very corporate and very capitalistic, something that you have to reach, have to achieve. So instead, I really would like to flip that and use the word intention. And I've been using that more with my students as well. And so when I looked up the definition of intention, the first one here is a thing intended, an aim, or a plan. So removing the judgment of if you don't achieve it, but it's really something that we're just holding and trying to keep in our present daily lives to help inform our decisions. And then the second definition I found really interesting. So it's more of a medical term, but it's the healing process of a wound. And I found that to be
I just grabbed a random definition that has nothing to do with the topic at hand, and I found it to be just so great.
The funny thing is it actually does, which is why she likes it so much. This is where you get into post-structuralist loony land. But basically, and I'm sorry I have to laugh at your reaction, Deb, because it was mine when I heard it the first time. But like the healing of a wound, like the idea is like there's so much harm in the universe, and to have an intention to frame these things as healing and the recovery from harm is connected to the way, like the whole zeitgeist and gestalt of what they're working with. So that's why she likes it so much, because it's not like to actually achieve a goal is too linear and masculine and capitalistic and corporatistic or whatever. But if you can think of it in sort of these sort of maternal healing terms, if you allow like the somewhat like sexist categories, that's actually a more wholesome and like gentle way to
it's also something you can't measure, so we'll never be able to hold them accountable.
Oh, right,
actually succeeded. It's like, when you go to the revival and they talk about healing you and all this kind of stuff, and we're gonna heal you. I mean, what I see, and I'm very cynical, but I see so much grift in this. You know, I don't want to be measured as a second grade teacher on whether I actually help the students learn to read or learn to do any kind of math or learn how to even tie their shoes or, you know, play nice with others, whatever the things that you would do. And, you know, in second grade, it was kind of like reading, spelling, a little bit of math. But, you know, I don't want to actually have that measured, but I can tell everyone I'm healing wounds and we're, you know, doing all this holding space for acceptance and blah, blah, blah. You know, go teach a yoga class or lead some meditations. But when you're teaching in a school, you're supposed to be measured on the performance that, you know, your performance through the performance of the students. And I could just feel like these people don't want that. So they keep introducing ways of knowing and ways of demonstrating knowingness they can't be measured. So they can say, you can't find fault with me. I was healed. You're healed.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, there are two things you made me think of that. One is that these folks have, you know, they may be
that with an X.
I did. It was implied. Is that, you know, they may not have done so well themselves with tests, and there's a lot of anxiety that they probably experienced around that. And also the way that teachers were assessed, you know, very often in these independent schools is more and more to the affective. So, you know, when you have a teacher observation, the administration isn't observing your results. They're not actually saying, do these kids know? What are the results? Did they learn the stuff they need to learn? It's all about engagement. So student engagement is the measure. So are they interested? Are they engaged? Do they look happy? I mean, that's not unimportant. Let's be honest, but it's not you're just taking the garnish and the side dish for the whole meal. Like there were teachers.
At the demeanor.
Yeah. Like
there's a way to be a teacher, especially in elementary school, Paul.
And they're thinking in terms of, could I make a video of this classroom, put it on the website and get parents interested in coming here? That's what they're thinking about. They're not thinking about, they're thinking about, does this make the brand look good? Is there representation in the classroom? You know, are there, I would get some guff sometimes if I happened to have a year in an advanced class where there were more boys than girls, whereas there were many years where there were more girls than boys. But, you know, if I had 1 year where there were more boys than girls, I was like, not a good look, Mr. Rossi. So, you know, that's, I think, part of what's animating this. It's not about results. It's about the superficial. So.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. That was almost the end.
Inspiring as well. Shop often.
Yeah.
So now what?
Wow. So much goodness. Do we want to get into whiteness? How do we feel about whiteness?
I think we need people to know that they're bringing it up in private.
All right, let's do a fun one. Let's do burn shit down. Number 6.
Let's do burn shit down.
Burn shit down.
All right, where's burn shit down? I did download it, didn't I? Yeah, I think this is the one. It didn't have a number. Here we go.
Oh, wait, that's just.
Yes. Okay.
This is the one, right?
So burn shit down, y'all.
This is the meme that might be made of this thing, but there's actually one which is number 6. She says this at the end.
I see.
Yeah,
okay.
I just made a short clip of this because I thought it was
got it.
pretty much captured everything. You know, but you're gonna see this is not. Yeah, that's the one.
And why we would do this in the classroom at all. This is done for teachers, right?
This is for teachers. This is a teacher training session, and it's one of the most ambitious ones. You know, I think it captures the revolutionary vibe, which runs throughout many of these. But I'll let you.
Here we go.
Burn shit down. Yes, I said a bad word. Am I in trouble? I don't know. I'm the vice principal. I could be in trouble with myself.
Wow.
Okay, now you're gonna listen. She's gonna put context on this. It's, you know,
that's fine.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just her little girly way of like, am I in trouble?
I know the crazy is big with this one. I actually kind of, if you watch 100 hours like I did, like you actually kind of, she's actually kind of like, you kind of like her. I mean, I kind of think that, but I don't want her teaching my kids. But anyway, go ahead, keep playing.
So, you know, sometimes things are just broken. It doesn't actually, okay, please nobody actually go and burn something down. I know we've got some folks who are a little bit upset sometimes, but they'll burn it down. But look at recognizing when systems are broken and they need to be rebuilt, right? Imagine something totally new. What new could happen? What if we just said, you know what, let's just start from scratch, do something different, create a new system, explore new systems, actually implement them. So not just dream them, not just dream up an idea, but actually implement it, create an action plan. You know, sometimes that makes more sense than spending all your time in triage and trying to fix the issues that have been created already or that exist already. You know, let's create something new. And then you have to have time to imagine that. So you have to put it on the agenda.
To imagine it.
Right. Right. And so now
they use the word imagine a lot.
Oh yeah, imagine. And it's really it's an interesting word because there is this sort of James Lindsay calls it kind of an alchemy, where if you change society enough and you create the space for this magic to happen, you dream, you imagine, it will like blossom, and the people will just, you know, the structures will come out and they'll be good structures. But if you look at some of the examples she has here, it's equitable grading practices. We could talk a little bit about that, and there are some other parts of, you know, that I don't have for today that I could talk about what that means. Abolitionist teaching, that's a big one. This is a big citation you hear a lot. Bettina Love. She is of the spirit murdering Black children fame, if you know about that.
I know that one.
Right. Defenders of the water school. I'm not sure if she originated or popularized it, but then you have Standing Rock and mastery grading approaches. So, which is basically like no letter grades. So like different type of thing, which is not all bad actually. By the way, I kind of have a sympathy for mastery grading, but what I really want to capture is the tone, and, you know, burn shit down is a metaphor, but
sure.
I can tell you, like, in the chat while this was going on, people were just saying like, yeah, burn it down, like fire it up. Like they were really getting into the metaphor, the other attendees at this thing. So this was clearly a favorite slide for the 300 or so people in attendance.
But it's so childish and incoherent. I mean, first of all, that it's irresponsible to talk about burning anything down or even reimagining systems if you cannot identify what the problems are, where they are, how, you know, like how you know they're there. Tell me how you know they're there. And then you have to understand how things currently work, how they currently function before you can decide that the answer is to burn it down. I mean, you don't burn your house down because your water heater is busted. You know, like it's just ridiculous the way they take this whole like all or nothing approach. It's really juvenile. And I don't see enough people pushing back on them and saying, you know, we want certain things to be improved, but you want to just destroy everything. And the problem is when you teach young children that everything is bad and we need to destroy it first, and you're using up a lot of their instructional time to do that, so they are not becoming proficient in any kind of basic skills, they don't have any way to rebuild any damn thing. So they're left with a heaping pile of ash and no society.
Right. And they get their, you know, they have marching orders, right? So what they do have is they know what they're supposed to do to be good people, which is to destroy what's bad.
And everything's bad.
Yeah, that same kindergarten teacher we saw earlier has a really interesting exercise she talks about, where she has the kids, you know, pick their favorite superhero, but then she gives them superpowers like empathy and caring. You know, this is not all bad, but
right.
You know, allyship, co-conspirator. She actually talks specifically about co-conspiratorship with the kindergartners. She's like, people say it's too advanced, but no, like being an accomplice, being a co-conspirator, the language of crime and war, you know, and these are my parenthetical remarks, are okay. So
yeah, right. So there's probably let's a little bit more.
Let's work with folks to recreate those systems that are just, in really looking at ourselves and being self-aware and going, when are we possibly clinging to something that we have done in the past and say, well, that's the way we've always done it, versus maybe looking at something that could be a new future.
They never give examples.
Yeah,
they never give examples.
Right. The examples that she does give, like, right. So yeah, she has examples on the slide, but these are not examples. These are practices and transcendental longing more than actual. Like if you look into abolitionist teaching, yeah, it's really a yearning. Like there's a tremendous yearning, which is almost erotic, frankly, from many of these folks that, you know, they are trying to transcend space, time, history, make year zero happen. And that's why you see, to even get specific, when I've asked them this, they're like, well, what do you mean by that? And they'll say, well, what does it mean to you? Right. So they'll turn it back on you and say, like, your job as an educator is to find the places where you can do those things. And, you know, it's not a roadmap. You're going to see a slide from someone who I find very fascinating. She's going to say, you know, this is an all-terrain journey. The journey to social
Okay.
justice is all-terrain.
That one is 14.
There are a couple, and I want to make sure we get them in the right order.
Where should I go next?
You know what? I would go to, yeah, let's play 14. 14 is good.
Okay, here we go.
It's essential. We are living in a very challenging and powerful time. Our work entails dismantling oppressive and racist systems, but it's also about the forces of generation, like regeneration. What systems are we creating? What systems of racial justice and racial equity are we creating? We need time to dream and to envision and to co-create those systems as well. Courage of Care talks about, you know, that we live in systems, systems live in us. But because systems are co-created at the various levels of systems ecology, they can't be eradicated.
This is like blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, there's a lot here. There's a lot to unpack.
Like, none of it makes any sense to me.
Yeah. Okay. So what she said, she's citing something, a text called Courage of Care. And this is getting to the systemic nature. Like, we live in systems, right? But systems also live in us. So our habits that are formed by existing within certain systems are patterns of behavior that, you know, we must be constantly interrogating ourselves to see how we replicate these patterns of behavior, which are biased and bad. And systems ecology is kind of gobbledygook, but basically just means like the way systems fit together. She's talking about cultures of practice, which are just interpersonally, internecine, interpersonal ways we relate to each other at the micro level, as, you know, a means to sort of take the whole thing apart. It's like, imagine like termites in a building, right? So like, you're working in the little interstitial spaces between atoms to take things apart, and that will lead to collective liberation.
But again, the presumption that we're oppressed.
Right. Well, we are.
I mean, you know, they start from a false premise, and you know, the thing they leave out is that whatever systems live in us, we chose to have there, and whatever systems we live in, we chose to participate in. And it's like human beings. She treats human beings like we're mindless sheep who live in the matrix, and we now have to like unplug ourselves. Now, I would argue that to a certain degree we kind of do, but not like this. Not what she's talking about, not the kind of system she's talking about. This is just she's just trying to matrix the little kids.
Yeah. It's fascinating. And she, you know, again, you hear this theme. We need time to dream, right? We need time, we need space. We need, you know, and that's the absence of structure.
It sounds like she needs some time doing a job if she gets her hands dirty.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like she's got too much time on her hands to imagine and dream and needs some time in the real world.
Right.
Have to end up.
Right. Well,
anyway, you want me to continue with her?
That's what my wife says. She says, you know, was this expression the Russians say, like, go unload boxcars.
Exactly.
Like, you know, go unload a boxcar. Make yourself useful.
Dream. So should I keep going with this?
Go ahead and keep going.
By addressing one aspect of the system alone, you have to create cultures of practice that transform the co-production of myths, norms, interpersonal practices, and institutional policies in the service of collective liberation.
Yes, in the service of collective liberation. Collective liberation is this wonderful magic big rock candy mountain at the end of the rainbow where everyone will hold hands and all people will have true equality. True equality is when full equity has been achieved. So this is something that's really interesting about the word equality. Equality, if you and I use the word equality, or just regular folks use equality in the sense of the civil rights movement in the 60s, 50s, 60s, equality was a given, right? It's a spiritual truth. We are equal at the level of our worth as human beings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Equality, if you talk about equality with these people, they're going to say, well, we're not equal yet, right? Equality without material equality is a kind of transcendental fluff to them. That doesn't mean anything, because it's essentially like a dialectically materialistic outlook, right? Until you have equity of stuff, including equity of access, equity of resources, equity of wealth, all those things, equality is just a figment of your imagination, right?
Do
Of
they
course,
understand that
yeah.
that's a pipe dream?
No, it's not a pipe dream. I mean, it may be a dream that came from pipes, but to them, it's a dream. It's a dream worth living for, right? Like it
No,
is
I
the
don't want to
goal.
live in that world. It's
Yeah.
called Harrison Bergeron, and it's really ugly.
Right. Well, until such time as people naturally, because if any one of us is, again, this is another theme. If any one of us is not free, none of us are free. So you'll see this again. It's like this bodhisattva mentality of like radical bodhisattva Marxism, right? And everyone has to constantly be on the lookout to take care of everyone else, and that their freedom is assured for society to move forward. And like that is a pipe dream. But I've had conversation with, I had long conversation with people at my school that this is what they do for a living, and they are like, yes, we believe that at a certain point in history, like when true equality is achieved, when you've achieved collective liberation, people will voluntarily give people according to their needs what they want, or what is what they
Have
need
they
to feel
left
whole.
their houses in the last 2 years to see how many people are absolutely undeserved? These are the same people who say you should be put in prison if you don't put a mask on your face. I'm pretty sure they don't want to voluntarily give me half their stuff.
Right.
They have whole systems. They have systems of othering and segmenting, and they don't want people to be equal. They're liars.
Right. Well, they're going to be the ones to manage people in such a way that they get.
Oh, so some animals
Right.
are more equal than others.
Right. So this is the dictatorship of the proletariat, but it's the dictatorship of the intersectariat, or the equitists, or however you want to say it. These are the people who are going to manage society. This is what all the careerism and grift, as you call it, is headed. Like they will, through the highest levels of government, corporate life, everything. Yes. Come and take it, or whatever
pretty much.
right?
Yes,
Exactly. That's why you
exactly.
can't argue. They can't really argue. You can only elicit the truth of what they actually believe. And
I don't
as
think
you
these
elicit
people
it,
can manage their own finances. I'm not looking for them to manage society.
Right.
No, I don't think so.
No.
All right, next.
Next up, there's been a lot here so far. Next up, let's talk about the white people way, number 7.
Number 7, the white people way. All right, I got to go grab number 7. Where are you, number 7? Oh, here it is. All right. Oops.
The next pitfall we're going to talk about.
Okay. Here we go.
Pitfall we're going to talk about can often be a sneaky pitfall because of the pervasiveness of white supremacy culture within independent schools in particular. In order to recognize that you are sort of experiencing the white people way pitfall, you can look for signs of white supremacy culture. So seeing things like a focus on perfectionism, a focus on power hoarding, not being willing to share, and a focus on product. Additionally, you may hear comments about, we need to meet people where they are, rather than pushing the work further. You may see literal white tears, and that can be a tool to disrupt the work. You may also see policing of language and tone, or arguments about semantics. And we are seeing this, I think, really strongly nationally with the backlash around CRT. We've seen it with white privilege and with a variety of other terms.
And arguing about those terms prevents us from moving forward on the work.
The work.
The work, right? This
Do the work. Do the work.
Yeah. I mean, Arbeit macht frei.
Yes.
Hello, like
It's
it really is.
literally
Yeah.
that. Work
The work.
makes free.
And the compulsiveness with which, you know, the phrase is fondled is interesting. Anyway, we also have, let's stick with her because she's an interesting person. Number 12, if you got number 12.
Okay, do I have number 12 downloaded? You're asking me for all the ones you didn't tell me.
I know. We didn't prepare.
I'm kidding.
It's
It's
my
not.
fault.
Luckily, it's super fast, so
Yeah.
it's not that big of a deal. All right, here we go. Get this over
There's
there.
a lot to process, so I think we're giving people a lot to
Yeah,
think about.
it's fine.
Literal white
Let's
cheers.
see. Okay, and I also have the next one, which is making people better. So when we are seeing individuals who are interfering with the work that is trying to be done, people need to do their own work in order to be better at this behavior, at this work. So people need to explore their own identity and biases. They need to work on their own resilience and ability to stay in difficult conversations. They need to learn to manage their own emotions and get comfortable with being uncomfortable, so that you can make it through a difficult conversation without crying. It's important that everyone understand white supremacy culture and the ways in which it shows up. And also to consider alternatives to white supremacy culture and other ways that we can engage as a group.
Alternatives to white supremacy culture. Oh, I can't wait. Oh my God.
And the more practice people have working productively and collaboratively with other people, the more effective they will be at doing this work. And I just want to name that white people especially need to be in an intentional and ongoing state of practice in order to counteract white supremacy culture and to keep their own privilege in check.
No.
A lot of, at least for me, like I was really behind in this work until I was an adult. I wasn't taught how to do this at school, and I had a lot of catching up to do. And it takes a lot of work in white affinity spaces in order to do.
Wait. I'm sorry. Wait. The way we fight white supremacy is to gather in white affinity spaces and do work as in white affinity spaces? You're muted. You're
Yeah, it's remarkable. And
wait, what?
Right. So white affinity spaces are sort of like flagellation caves is the way I could talk about it. I've been in them. Where you talk about your own fragility, how you've been called out, how you felt like maybe you confused two Black people, maybe you you touched someone's hair who didn't want to be touched. Those are the that kind of thing. And then you process
turn
it.
me into a less nice person.
Well, yeah,
you just named like 4 or 5 things that I probably have done. But honestly, if someone really cared, if someone was like that bent that I did any of these things, like I really don't care. Sorry.
Yeah, no.
Don't care.
It's funny because I actually have a lot of sympathy for this person. Clearly, she has been through. She's in a cult. She is. The bad side of this is that she's trying to get other people to join it, but it's about the mortification of the self. There's a kind of there's a real masochistic streak in this stuff, and it's interesting that there's a sense that all of the constraints that are put on the white people are allowable in the permitted in the BIPOC spaces, which are parallel to this. So it's this racial bifurcation at the level of permissiveness of behavior, and what she is doing to herself is perpetual, ongoing. It requires a kind of constant stoicism. There's another clip from this from this session where she talks about how she teaches other people in these white affinity spaces to feel grateful if they're called out or castigated or called to task for being racist
This is a
or causing
religion.
harm. Yeah, because
This is like a religion.
you know, they should be grateful because someone cared enough about you to actually think you could be better, right? So you're supposed to be grateful, not even. There's no question of questioning any of these allegations that are pointed at you because of lived experience and you know, you don't understand the harm you're causing. You don't even know where your blind spots are. You need to rely on the experts to show you where those are. There's a lot of this stuff going on. And of course, the ubiquitous white supremacy culture, which I urge everyone to look up. This is Tema Okun, Okun, from 1999. It's very early, but it's really not anything scholarly at all. It's just her autoethnography of herself running training sessions. And she identified these 15 characteristics of what she called white supremacy culture, including individualism, objectivity, the right to comfort, strangely, you know, worship of the written
The same people
word.
are like, you commented in my hair. I'm traumatized.
Right. So, you know, this is tremendous projection. And, you know, it's funny because she talks about how she came up with it. And she credits her partner at these facilitation training sessions in Berkeley in the East Bay. But it's a fascinating thing because it has just metastasized, and you see this everywhere. Things that actually help children function in society and started for the uptalk, but things that actually help them function are characterized as racialized and bad. So very bad, the whole thing.
All right.
Sorry.
What else?
What else? We one thing we should really talk about is number 11 because it gets to the transparency issue.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Hang on. I got to remove some. They tell me like get rid of some of the ones you've already done. Okay. So how do I get rid of them? Oh, there we go. That's simply as easy as that. Okay. So number 11 coming up.
So as you're in this planning process, there is the important question of how will you share progress and what kind of transparency is going to be optimal. It's what you'll share, how you'll share it, which constituencies need to hear what at what time. It's a fine balance because when you're doing like a whole school process, because on the one hand, the sharing makes it clear that this work is going on, this work is a priority, we're excited about these changes, but in a way, sharing too much and kind of like giving more updates can sometimes lead people to feel like they have a say in the process when they actually don't. Like that's more opportunities for feedback that is.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Wait. I'm sorry. Wait. We gotta go. We gotta back up there.
Yeah, back up.
That's more opportunities for feedback that is.
Wait, it didn't go back. Hold
on. But in a way, sharing too much and kind of like giving more updates can sometimes lead people to feel like they have a say in the process when they actually don't.
You don't have a say. Yeah, parents.
Wow.
You know, this carries through the manuals that they give to the administrators. NAIS has a library of about 12 or 13 books that you can purchase on their site that are instruction manuals for how to run a school. And among that, one of them is a guide for dealing with parents. And they're very specific that, you are the senior partner in the relationship between, among the parent and the child. And you need to, there are parents that you need to treat, that like children, essentially, that parents suffer from a lot of mental illnesses, and you should treat them in a way, they're not your customers. You don't exist at the behest of the parents. You're there to be the expert, and if they're one of those parents that is too pushy, just shut them out.
That it boggles the mind that they're saying this, like, we wouldn't want to give them the impression they have a say, because they don't. And they're paying. Let's remember, this is private school. This isn't
part of
even
the
public school.
anti-capitalism, and there's a fascinating paper published by Tom Taylor, who is the head of upper school at Riverdale, or he was till recently. He's a young man. It's always the young ones. Published a article in Critical Criminology. John McWhorter wrote an article about it, and it essentially says that the idea of thinking of the paying parents as customers is a quote unquote neoliberal ideology, and that schools have a duty to take steps in directions that don't conform with what the parents want. So you can look that up. It was published recently too. I think it was last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's just, and that's their bread and butter. That's why they have the money to do this. That's why these people are paid to do these. Where do they think the money's coming from? Like, it just grows on the trees? Oh yeah, capitalism's bad, except when they're making six figures. Oh my God. All right, let's continue.
That's more opportunities for feedback that is obstructive or negative, or asking a lot of pointed questions.
Well, we wouldn't want that.
So it almost invites pushback in situations where, you have these people are in different places and being on board.
That's a fancy way of saying don't agree with us.
Yeah, right.
They're in different places. I'm sorry you haven't come to the place where I am. You mean I disagree with you? That's what we call it. Disagree.
No, in their minds, there really is this kind of, what's the famous linear thing of the apes rising until you get to the human form?
Yeah.
Like, they're the human form. They're the enlightened ones, and everyone else is like different stages of being a troglodyte, and they're actual materials.
My knuckles aren't scabby or anything. I haven't been dragging them on the ground for a while.
Knuckle dragging. Right.
My God. Okay, here we go.
So it is worth thinking through in what you know about your own community and faculty and families, is the ways of sharing information and what's going to be optimal for each group, and how much and at what time, and can it be different for different groups, just to sort of differentiate in a sense.
Right. So, this is about messaging. This is about playing the different constituencies like an instrument. And who do we say to what, when? And so just a heads up for parents. Yeah. So diabolical, right? So we're going to say, speak out of both sides of our mouth. We're going to say different things. It'll mean different things to different people. Sometimes they use the same words that mean different things to different people. If you're a parent, you will be, and you have concerns, you will be ignored or humored. And until you actually see changes in policy and in your child's experience in the classroom and in the materials, like, you cannot trust a single word they say. They did this to me for years. You cannot trust a word. You have to see whether I talked to so many parents like, oh, I had such a nice conversation with the head of school. I really think we're making progress. Like, he understands. They will say whatever they need to say to get you out of the room where you're not bothering them anymore. It's part of the whole MO, and the transparency is a big part of it.
Unbelievable. All right.
Yeah. One more that might be useful is number 13. I don't know if you saw that one already. 13. We're back with our friend. Give us space to dream. That lady
is the reminder that racism is a baneful evil. It is a disease that impacts every single one of us. None of us are immune from the forces of racism, and we're all impacted by white supremacy culture. And many of us collude with it, sometimes for survival, sometimes for the fact of not having done the necessary and needed work to stay on the journey towards racial progress and racial justice. We have this expression often that you hear, not all skin folk are kinfolk. And when it becomes most painful is that because none of us are immune, there'll be times that in our schools, our parents of color, our students of color, or even our educators of color, our fellow colleagues will uphold white supremacy systems.
Another fancy way of saying disagree with us.
Right. Yeah.
They've come up with all kinds of fancy ways of categorizing people who won't go along with their nonsense as having some kind of problem that is that actually calls upon them to fix. Isn't that convenient? So
Right,
like they're
right.
the antidote to people who don't agree with them, that they just agree with them, then those people will be fixed too. They're broken. They're not just of a different opinion. These are the same
Right.
people trying to sell you diversity and inclusion.
Right. And the interesting irony of all this is, Foucault, James Lindsay said this, but Foucault, the pathologization of people who don't go along with you is part of the system of power that Foucault was talking about. And they're doing exactly the same thing. So they're saying you suffer from this. I myself, when I challenged, this notion that I'm not really white, like, what are we talking about? If it's a social construction, I'm not white. They said that I had identity anxiety. It was a pathology that I had, right? So I did not subscribe to their identities, so therefore I had a identity anxiety. And this, you see this with white supremacy stuff, and yeah. So let's keep listening, because she's going somewhere.
And that can cause particular pain as we're trying to navigate and do this work. Our liberation is tied, and this division that is created among and between folks of color about not recognizing that the connectedness of our liberation is often by design, is how white supremacy survives. And so it's particularly painful when you're an educator of color and one of the other educators of color in your school is undermining this work, because what ends up happening is that, and everyone points to that person and say, well, they're brown like you, and da 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 da. So we hold that, finding co-conspirators must come from a coalition of folks across all ethno-racial backgrounds.
Wow.
Ariana Presley famously, what was her famous quote? Was it Ariana Presley? I don't want to mix up the person, but we don't need black faces that aren't black voices. Remember that statement?
Might have been her.
Yeah.
Wow. The way we want them
one
to
of the
be
squad
voices.
members. Yeah, Democrats don't need any more black faces that don't want to be a black voice. So again, you have this identitarian epistemology. You must, if you are this, you are BIPOC with the capital everything. The quote that she references, not all skin folk are kinfolk, is a phrase popularized by Zora Neale Hurston, who had many conservative beliefs. She was not, and she used that quote in a completely different context, which is lost.
Different context.
So it's actually kind of making fun of the same bougie BIPOCs that this woman is. But it's a fascinating thing, and you see this as a thread throughout, and it's really distressing, because actually she never addresses the argument, right? You speak for all black people, and yet there are black people that disagree with you, so how can you do that? But it's yada yada yada, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So
all right,
that's it.
Is that all?
I think that's all we got. That I think.
So what are the key, let's try to sum up, what are the key takeaways for the audience? And I mean, do you think there are lessons here for us that apply across the board, not just to private schools? Because obviously a lot of this is reminiscent of things we've seen going into public schools, but what are the key takeaways for you?
From what I don't know, I'm still learning about how this works through public schools, but it seems to be, from what I've seen, that this is where a lot of these ideas kind of take purchase before they spread out into the wider national space, and that includes public schools. And I would say the takeaway is ask questions, don't be mollified. If you're a parent in these situations, they're a teacher or a student, you have to ask them. I would not challenge it directly. I would merely elicit, right? Ask those kind of questions. Like when I was in Catholic school, went to Sunday school, and we would always ask the nuns questions they couldn't answer, right?
Right.
Don't be a jerk about it, but like we were, but ask the questions like, well, what does social justice look like? What do you mean by social justice? How is that different than justice? You know, get them to really talk about what it means. Like, well, it's a place where society is equitable. What does that mean? Get them to, and you can even elicit a more broad answer if you validate it, right? Okay, it's a little bit of a jujitsu, but like actually, if it sounds good, maybe it's good. And ask and be like, oh, that sounds wonderful. Like, so who's gonna make stuff? Like, how is stuff gonna be produced? We're gonna share everything, but who's gonna make it? I actually asked that question, and someone said robots. That was the answer, right? Robot. Well, who's gonna build the robots? You know, like this. Look, they have not thought about how to make the dream real. Okay.
So, and robots are going to grow all the food too.
Robots
right?
gonna grow all the food, right? Well, and there'll be an eco paradise, so we'll just
And
reach our
robots
hand
are
up.
going to make all your clothes, and robots are going to build your house, and robots are going to maintain your gutters,
Right.
and your septic system and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And when the power lines go down in a storm, it's robots are going to go out and put them back up.
Yep, robots will make it happen. But yeah, I would say elicit and
Robot lives matter.
Yes.
What's next?
Any questions? Does anybody have any thoughts or questions?
Food comes from the grocery store, so it says. The only question is like how you sat there. Did you actually like sit through live trainings, or did you just watch recordings?
I did both. I sat through the live trainings, and I some of the live trainings, and I also received some of these from elsewhere. And it's really interesting, and I actually think what makes this dangerous is that it's not ham-handed. A lot of times the stuff Chris Rufo will send out, and you'll see splashed across Twitter, they're obviously ham-handed. They seem like things that a middle schooler maybe would be just like, what, but this stuff is more subtle, and I think the subtle stuff is far more dangerous because it provides something. It gives children who unfortunately may not have traditional values in their lives, it gives them something that makes them feel they belong, and it gives them answers to problems.
And we didn't cover the race in America stuff. Did we miss anything?
Race in America, was that? Oh yeah, actually that's tells you right away. I mean, there's stuff in there that's like, maybe we could watch one of those. Let's watch number 2.
Okay, because I feel like we may, there's more.
There's more.
People are probably going, wait, there's more.
If you have time, we can.
Yeah,
okay, let's do it.
Yeah. All right.
And then from there, we transition into Critical Race Theory: An Introduction by Richard Delgado, which is a fantastic book that really gives a great sense of critical race theory and gives a lot of personal ways to connect to these ideas that the students tend to really like when we get there. And finally, we end with Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria and Other Conversations About Race by Beverly Tatum, which is a fantastic sociological look at just how this stuff continues to work in the day-to-day now, moving beyond the history of things, looking at what's actually happening in an individual.
No. These are all opinions.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's so frustrating to me is they're talking about creating a curriculum. Now, if they want to read these things and then pull in some, Thomas Sowell or some other people, right? I mean, this is one very specific point of view. And it sounds like this is how they're teaching about race in America through this one point of view. No other point of view allowed. And then to say, this is how things are. They're teaching our children, this is how things are.
Yeah. And right. And so actually it's interesting. Like, Why Are the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria was not such a bad book. It was actually kind of a good book, but it got updated with a lot of the later scholarship. It's an earlier book, and now it's all CRT'd out. Yes. So this is the framework for the whole course. Now, this is a seminar. It's an elective, but the teachers got it funded. They talk about, in another clip, they talk about how George Floyd was was a lucky coincidence that allowed them to get it funded, which is, I think, is an interesting way of putting it.
Lucky coincidence.
Yeah. So there's another saying, you'll see this this is on the NIS website right now, between two different diversity practitioners, where they'll say, every crisis is an opportunity.
Oh, nice.
So they're looking for these angles and they're jumping on them.
Right, let's see what else
life. And so that was sort of the curriculum that we put together. And then after that, we allow students to go on and figure out where their interests in race and racialization lie. And so they then have to find more reading on their own that is directional for what they want to achieve. And all of that leads to a final culminating project where they try to find a way to really synthesize what it is we've been talking about by the end of the year.
Those are horses. We'll discuss that later.
Yeah. So just to look at our books, again, stamped from the beginning, White by Law, Critical Race Theory, and Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? We read them in that order, and they are fantastic. If you haven't read all of them, any of them, highly recommend all of them.
So you can see, like, if you ask these, well, if a parent says, well, do they get any choice to read something else? They'll say, well, yes, of course. Like, we have the readings, but then when they do their project, they can read more widely. Right. So you might get the sense, well, if they read something, they'd have to find it on their own. It would be harder to find it. They usually have to do these projects in conjunction with the teachers. So they're going to put their finger way on the scale in that regard. When I actually challenged my administration about viewpoint diversity, I was told that there is a conversation to be had between the differences between Ibram X. Kendi and the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. The People's Institute for Survival and Beyond is a Marxist organization. Okay, so what their idea of what is a legitimate debate is so paper thin, narrow, and way to the left of anything that you mentioned, Sowell, and so, like, it would just be, if you mentioned Thomas Sowell, it'd be like you just left an unmentionable stain on the carpet. That's the way they would.
Well, you thought about bringing in Glenn Lowry, and we're told that was not allowed.
Definitely not. No, definitely not. No, that would confuse and inflame the students.
Right.
So
anything else here? So we got that, creating a curriculum.
So this is, and I post this on Twitter, and people say, no, there's no CRT in high school. And I'm like, did you watch the video? I don't know what to say. We could watch them in order. We could do 3, 4, 5. Okay. It's all about this one class.
Sure. Here we go.
So you see people like Tim and I, we were already thinking of ways to really bring race to the school, and just let's actually talk about it. Let's be honest about it.
Let's be very clear that talking about race in school is not synonymous with being honest about race in school. And I did an interview with Sheena Mason last week. I don't know if you caught it, but I bring her.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, bring Sheena. And then we'll talk about being honest about race in school. But just bringing race into the school as like a central focus and a topic is not synonymous with doing something good. Let's just leave it at that. Okay, let's continue.
But it seems like the momentum just had a hard time catching up until all these lucky confluences, these relatively serendipitous instances started to pop up. So we can actually open the door a little wider and a little wider for the school to actually find its identity in some of this work.
And so because of that, because of the sort of lucky confluences, as we followed through, as we went to the administration, it really became pretty easy. It became, it sort of grew its own legs and moved quite quickly. Both the Dean of Faculty and the Dean of Academics at the time, we talked to them and both were very excited about it, both greenlit it and said, yes, let's get this done. And so we ended up not having to really fight for the creation of the course. but having to instead really work on fleshing out everything else, all the other little pieces that we were going to need in order to actually teach it.
Oh, how nice for them that George Floyd died and the whole world went crazy and there was an election and that, I mean, lucky confluences. They both said it.
Yeah.
And then saying, the administrators were only too happy to throw money at them to create a course.
Yeah.
Do
I
something.
think,
Talk about race now.
Right. It's so interesting. Like it really shows you under the hood what's going on in these schools and how these things got accelerated, hyper accelerated. What was the rocket fuel? Yeah.
All right. So next we've got the next one in that series. So we had 4, 5. So this would be, so this would be 5. Okay. Did I do that one? Hold on one quick
Did you
second.
do 4 yet? I don't know if you did 4 yet. I think this was 3.
Presenting to administration. This is 4.
Oh, it's 4. Okay.
Yeah,
maybe
so now,
did we do 3? What was 3?
And 3 was the one about the curriculum, developing the curriculum.
Okay. Yeah.
Or creating the curriculum. So then this one now is going to be the concerns looking forward, which is the next one and the last one in this series.
As soon as we talked about it, the school started advertising that this was a set in stone thing, that we were going to be offering it the following year, and we're using it as a way of getting kids to come to the school. And so again, if that had been performative, then there was a lot of concern there. However, most of that concern has been assuaged. We have seen a little bit more going on with the school in other areas besides our course. And so
they're wokeifying the whole school. And so we're not worried about our funding. So we're good.
It's been good to see and good to feel those concerns not be as prevalent. So some of those things that have come out, I am now teaching a short course on critical race theory for our faculty, for a small group of them, which will then become a course for our department heads and for our administrators. And so I'm able to take some of this course and give it to the administration and a lot of our teachers in some meaningful ways, I'm hoping.
I noticed this elective course only reaches students with enough interest to sign up for it. Oh, boo-hoo. So sorry, you can't force every student paying to be there to take your stupid class.
It's a limitation.
My God.
Yeah.
This is so disgusting.
There's one more video I want. There should be 4 from this Race in America thing. Do you see 4?
See.
4 in all.
There
Do you see one that says number
prompts,
3?
Something prompts. Yeah, it's 3.
Do you see project? Oh, there's only because there's number 3 in the original Google Drive is an actual student project from this course.
That's
and I think it's really important.
As Ladari says,
this one
we had some interesting final projects. So here on the left, we have a board game that one student made at the end of the year. And you have the road of racism on one side and the path of privilege on the other. And basically what the student did was create this game that she then played with her roommates, that shows how small things in your life can really hold you back a lot, where if you are on the other side of the path of privilege, those things might not come up and might not be the difficulties that other people face. And so whoever plays the path of privilege always wins. The way that she wrote the cards, if you're on the road to racism, it's mathematically impossible for you to actually get to the end, just because.
And that has zero relation. I mean, Frederick Douglass was a slave.
Yeah.
Like
Booker T. Washington. I mean, it's all swept into the dustbin of history.
It's mathematically impossible for you to reach the end, to get to the end. That doesn't even reflect reality. And where is there room to have a conversation about whether it's possible? Because, I turn on my TV now and you would think that the only people there anymore that any consumer product wants to serve are black women. But anyhow, what where's the conversation about the possibility of something called black privilege at this point, especially getting into private schools? I mean, can we talk about it? Let's put it out there. They're denying reality left, right, and center.
Yeah, and there's a way that I think gets carried through this, is that if you do succeed as a person that's oppressed, then it must be because you somehow are a Tom, right? You must have participated in some way in the white supremacist system. You must have been bought off or co-opted, because there's no way you would have ever succeeded without it. Because if failure is caused by oppression, well, then success means that somehow you weren't oppressed. This is the corollary of this, and this is why people lumped together as Asian get the short end of the stick on all this, or Jewish, because if you've succeeded, it doesn't matter how much you've actually suffered, but your success is either evidence of complicity, or maybe you're just not that underprivileged, right? Because God knows that anyone who's underprivileged never made it, right?
How insulting.
Totally insulting. If you look again, the images on this board game are interesting. You see the eyes that are crying.
Yeah.
Right? There's a cry. So this kind of thing, this kind of cloying, debilitating empathy curdles into this kind of pity, which is totally insulting to me. Like I mean, people have told me this too. Like, don't treat me this way. This is not helping. This is not empowering me. Keep your damn pity.
Exactly.
It's disgusting, really.
So it really is.
That's the two things I take away from this.
Is there more?
This project. This is all we have from this class. We may have to say goodbye to this class.
Yeah.
And these well-meaning gentlemen.
Yeah, that was interesting. But all right, so the key takeaways of the whole thing are that private school is captured.
Right? Yeah, the system of 1600. Now there are other accreditation. There are other private school systems. I met a wonderful fellow at the Foxman's Education Summit. His name is I'm going to forget his name, and it's so sad. But there's called the ACCE, which is the Christian one, and it's pretty good. Not all Christian schools are inoculated against this, but it seems pretty good. What I've seen. Just if you're planning, the one thing I want to, if you're planning to get out of public and go into private, don't jump from the frying pan into the fire.
Right.
Look and really talk specifically to the DEI officers or whoever these commissars are, and really hear from them directly, like, well, what kind of things?
Yeah, I would actually say if they have a DEI officer, that's a pretty big red flag.
Yeah, right
there.
It's hard.
Why do they have one in the
one.
first place?
But yeah, true.
Why do they have one in the first place? Oh, thank you. So yeah, they probably don't want to be having a DEI department, DEI office. I was talking to my daughter yesterday. She's applying to App State here in North Carolina. And I said, have you looked at the department? Have you looked at the psychology department? And she's like, well, no, I'm just busy filling out my application. I think you ought to take a look. 2/3 of the page was their DEI policy and their DEI statement. And I tried to translate for her, we're like committed to recruiting more people who are marginal, blah, blah, blah. And I said, that means they're having racial quotas for who they're hiring to teach you. And then another one, this is the racial quota for who the students will be at the school that major in their department to get access to their classes and get the major advisors and all this. I'm like reading all this. I'm like, do you understand what you are signing up for? Little white girl. And I mean, not to put a fine point on it, but like they're telling you coming into this, you have to take a seat. Like our priority isn't you. And I'm not saying the priority should be her. I'm just saying they're not supposed to put right up front and center. We're going to center people who look a certain way or who have a certain, identity, because they use the word identity throughout. Identities.
Yeah, and it's not just race, it's all of the things, right? It's cis, trans, it's gender, all the gender. And so there are trainers in sessions in this conference that say explicitly, like, every single decision that I make
Right.
is focused, centered on the most marginalized kids in the school, right? So
Okay.
the white kids or whatever, as they call them, are fine, right? And there was a woman that says it, like, the white kids are fine. Don't worry about giving something to the oppressed kids that you don't give to the white kids. The white kids are fine. So this is a very sort of
Well, according to them, they're not just fine. They need to go spend a whole lot of time in white affinity spaces self-flagellating about how not fine they are and how they need to do more to purge themselves of this horrible whiteness. And they're teaching that then to the children, that you are stained, you are tarnished, you are bad, you're sinful. This is, and the same people would have looked at the movie Jesus Camp and said, oh my God, how awful.
right.
And here they are. And all you got to change it around to is CRT camp or SEL camp or whatever camp. And it would be the exact same thing.
Yeah, there is God in schools, and
Yep.
the God is social justice, and that's it. So, like, it's a religion unto itself. And watch out.
And people, you should know, those watching, that you should know that Paul tried to post this stuff on Twitter and got his hand slapped by the NAIS, right? Twitter took
Twitter did, but what happened was their legal department or their vice president of whatever submitted a DMCA strike, so it was a copyright violation.
Okay, so am
I'm
I going to
still
get one
working
too?
that out. I hope not. Maybe
it's possible, but we'll see. But you can see these things. If something happens to this video, it is going to be on Odyssey as well. I'll see if I can get it over on Rumble, but it'll be on Odyssey. They automatically go there, and Getter has stuff too. And then of course I have a copy of this which I can give to Paul, and we can manage. I'll put a copy of it up on my locals. So if it goes away, you don't have to worry that it's gone, because it'll be on Odyssey and on locals as well.
Yes, and you can. I'm posting mine on my Twitter, Paul D. Rossi, and that links over to Getter, so you can watch all these clips again and see my commentary on each of the clips that way. All
right. Thank you so much, Paul. I really appreciate it. If you get any more interesting intel, please, I hope you'll come back and share it with us. And
I'd love to.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. Please share this broadcast and consider subscribing to the channel so you can be updated when I make more videos like this. Everybody have a great weekend.